If you've ever pulled a snatch or a clean that's felt light from the floor, but then you suddenly lose balance beyond the knee, this is probably why. When we miss a lift, we usually look to assess the top of the chain, be that our extension, our lockout, or our bar path. But a lot of problems actually start much lower than that. In the snatch and the clean, we're trying to maintain pressure through the middle of the foot throughout the entire pull, not rocking back into the heels, not tipping forward into the toes. Midfoot pressure means that your center of mass stays over your base of support. For some lifters, this actually may feel more heel biased, and for others more evenly flat. But the common thread here is even balance across the whole foot in the pull. And this is where people can get confused. Because midfoot pressure doesn't mean that your heels need to stay glued to the floor the entire time. As the bar accelerates in the second pull, the heels generally begin to rise somewhat. And in doing that, the pressure will migrate towards the ball of the foot. That's completely normal. But the matter here is if you still maintain midfoot balance while this happens. If your balance shifts too far forward, you'll risk being pulled forward out of position. And if your balance shifts too far back, you'll likely compensate because of this. And this usually shows up in the likes of early arm involvement in the pull, loss of vertical leg drive and extension, or perhaps a bar crash. So the issue isn't necessarily heels down or heels up. It's about maintaining balance as we transition from the second pull into extension. And this is also a reason why the bar isn't perfectly over the middle of the foot as we start the lift. In getting the knees through enough when getting set for the snatch or clean to ensure that we can drive with the legs, while also not sending the shoulders too far forward or the hips too high, the bar sits rightly above the ball of the foot. And that's not a flaw, but it's where the bar needs to be for the rest of the body to be in place. From this position, the job is to push through the floor with the legs, just like a leg press, but without letting balance drift as we do so. Here's a quick way to expose this. Set up for a light snatch or clean deadlift and put a pair of change plates under the midfoot of both feet. Now this drill itself isn't to exactly teach balance, but it's removing your ability to hide from it if your balance is off in the first pull. By slightly lifting that midfoot with a pair of change plates, you then lose that option to then lean heavily in the front or the back of the foot. If the force application in the first pull is truly centered, this pull should still feel okay, despite being slightly unstable due to that raised midfoot. If not, you'll immediately feel those toes gripping or that heel falling and likely have tension build in the arms as a mean to compensate that loss of balance. The plate didn't exactly create the problem, it just more so exposed it. But beyond this first pull, can still catch lifters out if they lose balance beyond the knee. We need to carry that centered pressure through the midfoot throughout the second pull and into extension. Keep force moving through that midfoot in the second pull as the knees rebend and the bar travels up the thigh close to the body. This is a pivotal point where a lot of lifters lose it. They'll shift onto the toes too early and then chase the bar forward with the hips because of it, or load the heels too much and have to bend the arms and row the bar into the hips to compensate. You can see that midfoot pressure is somewhat that first domino that can cause a bunch of different technical issues if we don't keep it in check throughout the entire pull. Keep that pressure centered and your balance and bar path will look a lot better. Lose it early or late and you'll find that the body has to compensate in one way or another.